You're watching San Francisco Rising with Chris Manners. Today's special guest is Jeff Tumlin.
Hi, I'm Chris Manners, and you're watching San Francisco Rising, the show that's focused on restarting, rebuilding, and reimagining our city. Our guest today is Jeff Tumlin, the Director of Transportation at the SFMTA, and he's with us to talk about the agency's 23-24 budget, the MUNI Service Equity Strategy, and some new projects across the city. Mr. Tumlin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, it's really good to be here.
Well, thank you too. I see that the SFMTA's budget for 2023 and 2024 has recently been approved. How will it help provide a strong recovery during the next 2 years for our riders, operators, and other staff?
So it's been a challenging couple of years for us. COVID completely wiped out SFMTA's basic finances. Our agency is funded primarily from transit fares, parking fees, and a fixed set aside from the general fund. And COVID has meant we've lost more than half of our parking and transit fare revenues, and we're not expected to recover until 2027. So this budget takes some one-time federal relief funding and spreads that out between now and 2025. And our task is really to rebuild trust with the voters that SFMTA can actually deliver on their goals. And that includes things like making MUNI faster, more frequent, and more reliable. It includes making our streets safer and making everyone feel safe riding the bus. It means taking advantage of the amount of change that we're going to experience in order to advance equity so that we invest the most amount of money in communities that need our services the most. And it also means supporting San Francisco in its larger economic recovery. So we have basically 2 years between now and 2024 in order to build trust with the voters and then figure out how are we going to fund MUNI moving forward, because it's in 2024 or 2025 when our one-time federal relief funds run out.
Are you planning on staffing up?
We are. So as a result of COVID, we have 1,000 vacancies in the organization. That's why MUNI service is still not fully recovered. So this budget allows us to fully staff up through 2024, which means we can restore MUNI service, invest in safety, and invest in other programs in order to make the transportation system work better for everyone.
Can we talk about the MUNI Service Equity Strategy? As we move out of the pandemic, how has that plan been updated? I've heard that there are some elevator upgrades in progress.
So we've been working a lot on equity during MUNI's recovery, and we've been basing our work on what's called the MUNI Equity Strategy. This is a plan that we update every 2 years that looks at the changing demographics of San Francisco and helps us direct our transit resources where people need it the most. And that means people with low incomes, people of color, seniors, people with disability, children, all the folks who have the fewest mobility choices. So during COVID, when we had to strip back the transit system, when 3/4 of our workforce were in quarantine, we directed all of the agency's resources to our MUNI equity neighborhoods, places like the Bayview, Chinatown, the Intermission, the OMI neighborhood, Viz Valley. And even through our recovery, we've continued to deliver the best MUNI service to the neighborhoods that need it the most. Right now, we're still offering more frequent service in core lines in MUNI equity neighborhoods than we did pre-COVID. And the result of that is extraordinarily high ridership. We're finding, for example, by investing in speed, frequency, and reliability on lines like the 22 Fillmore, that we're getting 133% of pre-COVID ridership, even when the overall system is only at about half of its ridership recovery. That 133% is on weekends, and we're at about 96% of pre-COVID ridership on our main high-frequency equity lines on weekdays. So we're also investing in a whole variety of infrastructure projects aimed at making transit work better, particularly for people with disabilities. On the Market Street corridor, our elevators to our subway stations date back to the 1970s and need significant renovation. So right now, we're busy working on renovating the elevators at Castro Station. So we've completed the elevator upgrade for the eastbound platform. We're now working on the westbound platform, and that will modernize those elevators, make them a lot more reliable, and make sure that we can continue to prioritize people with the fewest mobility choices.
That's great. Changing topics slightly, I understand that the L Taraval Improvement Project is about halfway completed. Have shared spaces and parklets made the project more complicated?
Yes. Well, lots of things have made the L Taraval project more complicated, including things like COVID and supply chain issues. We learned a lot on the first phase of the L Taraval project, which completely rebuilt Taraval Street from Sunset Boulevard to the zoo, including rebuilding all of the infrastructure of the street, a lot of the underground utilities to modernize all that infrastructure, make it more resilient to earthquakes, and make sure that we do not have to rebuild the street, hopefully in any of our lifetimes. We also learned about the importance of collaborating, particularly with neighborhood businesses and also with residents. We want to make sure that reconstructing the city's infrastructure in a time when so many businesses are suffering, that we're not adding to that suffering. So we're doing a lot of things like partnering with the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development to support neighborhood businesses through programming during this time. We're also making sure that businesses that created shared spaces in the parking lane, some of those need to be moved out of the way while the utility work is done underneath them. We're making sure that we will either move those platforms and outdoor eating areas back as they were, or help local merchants rebuild them so that we're not adding to the burden of local businesses, and that we help everyone recover in this challenging time.
Quite right. So now finally, many of the SFMTA's Vision Zero QuickBuild projects have been well received. Can you talk about the Evans Street project and why it's so important?
So one of the things that we did during COVID was dramatically expand the rate of what we call QuickBuild projects, which are fast-moving projects using simple and cheap materials in order to redesign streets and test out new ideas and see how they work, as well as get a lot of feedback from community before moving into a larger capital project that converts all of that plastic stuff into concrete and trees and curb extensions. So what we've been finding is that our QuickBuild safety projects are able to cut severe injury and fatalities by between 25 and about 75%, depending upon the location and the techniques that we use. And so we're targeting streets that have the highest rate of traffic crashes, and particularly injury crashes and fatalities. So we focused on Evans, which is a really, really important connector for all modes of transportation between the Bayview and the central neighborhoods of San Francisco. Also a street with a terrible track record of severe crashes. So in Evans, what we're doing, again using paint and plastic posts for the time being, is taking the 4 lanes that are out there right now and converting them to 1 lane in each direction plus turn pockets. And what we found on streets like Valencia or South Van Ness, or actually dozens of streets around San Francisco, is that a street with 1 lane in each direction plus the turn pockets can move just as much traffic as a street with 2 lanes in each direction, because left-turning vehicles mean that those 2 lanes of traffic are never really available for through traffic. So these road diets that we do have been tremendously effective for improving safety outcomes for all road users without exacerbating traffic congestion. They do make all cars slow down to the speed of the most prudent driver. So this week, we're getting started in partnership with the Department of Public Works on work to restripe really all of Evans between 3rd and Cesar Chavez. As part of this work, we'll be collecting a lot of data. We'll be talking to the industrial users in the industrial district. We'll be talking to folks in the Bayview Commercial District, as well as in the Mission, about how is it working. We'll likely make some adjustments along the way, and if it's successful, then we'll start another project that is more capital intensive to make it permanent. And if it's not successful, we'll turn it back the way that it was, having spent very little money.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show, Mr. Tumlin. Thank you for the time you've given us today.
It's been great being here. Thanks so much.
And that's it for this episode. We'll be back with another one shortly. You've been watching San Francisco Rising. For SFGovTV, I'm Chris Manners. Thanks for watching.